Hi there, this is Esther Davis, and I'd like to talk to you about how to heal from your past trauma. And one of those ways that I'd like to discuss is talking about it. See you soon. Hi there, this is Esther, and I am here to talk to you about trauma. But I first like to share with you the definition of trauma. For an individual, it is said to be an event or a number of experiences that causes a fundamental shift, a negative or harmful shift in the way we think about ourselves, the way we think about others, and the way we think about our lives. It causes an emotional injury within. Trauma breaches trust or safety. It impacts every area of human functioning, either physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. Now, what I plan to do is to share with you some of the ways I experienced trauma. See, what I believe is that if I want you to share something about yourself that is so sensitive and so important, that I need to share with you some of the things that I've dealt with as well. I need to share with you some of my experiences to let you know ways that I also shared my stories and how it helped me overcome the trauma in my life to be able to move on and to do some of the things that God purposed me for. And I believe this actually is one of the things that God purposed me for. Now, I'm going to be vulnerable and I'm going to be honest with you. You need to be vulnerable too. But it's okay. It will it will definitely make you stronger. And at first, I'd like to tell you about a story, a situation that happened to me when I was in elementary school. I was in about the fourth or the fifth grade, and this particular day, one of my teachers was out, and another teacher had come in to take her place. Now, this teacher that had come in to take her place, I had seen her around the school. I thought she was a beautiful lady. She seemed like she was nice, and she seemed like she had a great personality and everything. So I was a little excited that she'd come in. And she actually had written the assignment on the board, and she asked us to copy the assignment and complete it. And while I was copying the assignment, all of a sudden I heard the other kids in the classroom laughing. And so I looked around, I looked at them, and they were looking at the teacher, and then they were looking at me. So when I looked at the teacher, I realized that she was actually mocking me because I was squinting to see the blackboard. A teacher. I was so embarrassed. I felt like I wanted to hide. I think I felt worse because she was a teacher, was an adult. Until that day, I thought she was a nice person. That day, I felt that whenever I was in a situation where someone was laughing and I wasn't aware of what the joke was or what they were laughing about, I felt like I was the brunt of the joke. I look back at years after that happened and I realized that I was paranoid many times, thinking that people were laughing at me and they probably had no clue that I felt that way. But this situation actually affected me mentally and emotionally. I didn't know what to do with the feelings. I felt, I couldn't address the situation. And so what I did was I pretended that it didn't bother me. I pretended that it didn't hurt. But it did. And another situation I experienced as a child was also in elementary school. There were a couple of teachers that they actually felt like I was a good student and that I had a pretty neat and good handwriting, and so they would get me to help them out a lot. But after a while, my classmates started to resent me for it. And so when I wasn't looking, they would steal things from me. They started calling me names. One of their favorite names was Innocent Esther. I don't know why, what made them come up with that name. But one day when I had come from lunch, I came into the classroom and I sat down at my desk, and the entire class came in and jumped over the space where my desk was to let me know that none of them wanted to be in my space. Now, it was every one of them, even the ones that were supposed to be my close friends. So it really hurt. Again, I felt separate. I felt alone. And I chose to keep to myself as much as possible so that I could avoid anything like that happening again. Again, I pretended it didn't bother me. But this, I felt, I didn't just feel alone. I felt affected in my spirit. I had a time of, I realized at that point that I know I no longer felt comfortable, laughing and being happy with them. It would be pretending. It wasn't going to be real anymore. I realized that I couldn't trust them. I couldn't trust any of them. You see, I'm an introvert, and I've always been known to be quiet unless somebody's talking about something that I love. I love singing, I love music, I love the arts, I love drawing, writing, whatever. So if you're talking about one of those things, then I would talk. But other than that, I was pretty quiet. And one thing that bothered me growing up was a lot of times I would hear, oh, you have to watch those quiet ones. They're sneaky. It was as though they were labeling me as like a deceitful person, and I hadn't even done anything. I always felt that it was an unfair statement. And as the years went by, I realized in my experience, it was in many of my experience, it was actually the ones that were a little louder that were the ones that you needed to watch. In my experience, they were the ones that were in authority, the ones with power. A lot of them were bullies. They were the ones that felt threatened because of their insecurities. I realized some of them seemed to wait for people like me to come around to be the victim of whatever they planned to do. Hurt people hurt people. Now, things did get, just seemed to, change as years. I went through different experiences through the years and everything, but, I managed to get by, still not trusting people, still thinking that I might be the brunt of someone's joke. But when I was 19 years old, I decided that I would seek God and get to know Him for myself. So I started attending a church that my family went to, some of my family members went to. Now, the pastor, when I heard him sing, I mean, he had one of the most beautiful voices I had ever heard. And he even had a daughter my age, and she had a beautiful voice. But that was my first time really being kind of close around pastors or whatever. And I always thought that pastors were definitely seeking God. And I thought with this man having this wonderful voice and being a pastor, he had so much power when he preached. I put him on a pedestal. And because I had put him on a pedestal, I thought that he would never even realize I existed. But then one day I walked by him and he said that I had beautiful eyes. And after that, he would give me compliments here and there, but I didn't think anything of it. And after a while, I joined the choir and everything. And one day, on one of my cousins' wedding day, this pastor was the only person leaving the wedding and going to where the choir was singing. And so I didn't have a ride. I didn't drive. And so my mother told me to ask the pastor for a ride. And he agreed that he would take me. So we're riding along, and he waited until we got on the highway, and that's when he started giving me compliments. And over a period of time, he just seemed to keep saying more and more things, and it made me more and more uncomfortable. And before I knew it, this man reached over and touched my breast and asked me if I would meet him sometime. I never knew that you could admire someone so much 1 second, and the very next second despise them. I was hurt, I was disgusted, disappointed, and angry all at the same time. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't get out of the car on the highway, but I did call him a dog. And I reminded him that he had a daughter my age. But you know what he did? He just laughed at me and said that he didn't say that he wanted to have sex with me. He said that he just wanted me to meet him someplace. I just sat there quietly, and I just couldn't wait to get to the church to get out of the car. But you know, he had the nerve after that to get my phone number from one of the trustees at the church. And he started harassing me. He would call me every morning. And that was before we had caller ID. So I would answer the phone, and when I realized it was him, I would just slam the phone down. It wasn't until I told him that I was going to tell someone that he stopped calling me. I felt like he was definitely a hypocrite. But he made me believe, or because he did that, it made me believe that all pastors were hypocrites for a while. I didn't want to go to another church, and I didn't for a long time. I actually thought that God let me down because I had actually gone to seek him when that happened. I even at some point just questioned God's existence. But I was wrong. I was wrong about God. Over the next few years after that, God showed me in so many ways that I could never deny him again. And I realized that all pastors aren't hypocrites. But it was a process. I talked to God. In the wee hours of the night, I would talk to God over and over, just trying to understand life itself and some of the things that had transpired. And I built a relationship with him. And I believe he in turn showed me that I could trust and depend on him. And now that I had developed this great relationship with God, I had become a little happier. You know, I started getting more involved in spiritual things and groups. And I also, during those years, I gave birth to a beautiful daughter out of wedlock. But that's a whole nother story that I'll tell you at another time. But when she was about 8 years old, we joined a church that I thought would be a good match for both of us. They had a lot of things for children and for adults. And they almost immediately asked me to teach the children Bible study. And over the course of the 4 years that we were there, I taught the Bible study. I directed the adult and children's choirs. I painted murals on the walls in and outside of the building, the church building. And I did any and everything else that they asked me to do. But also during the latter part of the time that we were there, the latter years, the wife, the pastor's wife, she started saying things to me that I didn't understand. She came up to me twice when I was talking to somebody else. She walked up behind me and she said, "You're a martyr." And then she walked away. And I didn't understand it. And then after she had said it a couple of times, I actually asked her one day, I said, "You said that I was a martyr. What did you mean by that?" And she said, "Oh, I don't know. You must have been whining or something." And I hadn't been whining. As I said, I was laughing, talking to someone, and she came up behind me and said it and walked off. But she kept doing things like that over and over again. And it made me think, that I'd done something, or I just wondered why. So I really prayed about it, and I asked her one day, I said, "Can we meet? Can we talk?" And she agreed. And that day I went in and I sat down to talk to her. And just when I was about to tell her why I wanted to meet, she said, "Wait a minute, before you say anything, if you stayed here at this church, we will be holding you back." And I said, "What?" Um, I don't know what to say right now. And she said, "Well, wait a minute. Let me go get my husband. He'll explain it to you." So she went and got her husband, and he came back and he said, "Sister, I have never met in the 52 years I've been living anyone as talented as you. You have taught our choirs, made our choirs sound like they've never sounded before. I mean, you've taught our children, you've painted our walls and everything." He said, "You've done a beautiful job, but if you were to stay here, we'd be holding you back." And he said that I want you to seek God and find out where he's going to have you to go. And wherever you go, sister, we will send you a letter of recommendation because you've been a blessing to us." I didn't know what to do with that. I actually didn't realize until later that they actually put me out. And they didn't tell me why. To this day, I don't know why. And so I went around for a few months just numb, and I kind of like weaned myself out of there trying to figure out what to do. And months later, after I'm gone, they had meetings before both of their services. And mind you, I hadn't talked to them at all between that time, the time that I left and the time that they had these meetings. They had a meeting before both of their service, their morning service and their afternoon service. And they told their congregation that I had the Jezebel spirit. You might ask, what's the Jezebel spirit? Well, there are a variety of opinions about what constitutes a Jezebel spirit, and everything from a sexual looseness in a woman to the teaching of false doctrines. That was not me. That's nowhere near the kind of person I am. Now, the Bible doesn't actually mention a Jezebel spirit, although it has plenty to say about Jezebel. See, Jezebel's story is in 1st and 2nd Kings, and she was the daughter of Ethbaal, king of Tyre, Sidon, and priest of the cult of Baal, a cruel, sensuous, and revolting false god whose worship involves sexual degradation and lewdness. This is what they accused me of. Ahab, the king of Israel, married Jezebel and led the nation into Baal worship. Ahab and Jezebel reigned over Israel, and it's one of the saddest chapters in the history of God's people. They told the congregation that I had that spirit, and they told them never to talk to me again. This situation was worse than any situation I experienced. It rocked me to my core. This left me speechless, feeling betrayed. I was lied on. They actually defamed my character, and I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to turn to. And though I knew deep down that it wasn't really true what they said, and I knew that this wasn't who I was, I actually was convinced that I must have done something to make them think that. But But you know what? For the first time in my life, I sought to find out, who was I? Who was I? I knew I wasn't that spirit, but who was I? So I went on a retreat alone. Me, my blanket, CD player, and a journal. I asked God to help me get past this. I asked Him to show me just what I was supposed to do with this. How do I defend myself? And I don't even know what I'm defending myself from. I didn't know what I had done to them for them to do this to me. But that day was the beginning of me finding out who I am. And I don't believe that I would have searched so hard had these pastors not done this to me. I would have continued to walk around and to be a stranger to myself while others put labels on me. And for that, I am now able to give thanks to those pastors. And I forgive them. Right now, I'm filled with gratitude to God for Him pointing that out to me, because I'm able to forgive them. I still realize it was bad what they did, but I forgive them. And since that time, I have not been a victim to anybody anymore. If somebody accuses me of something, I know it's not me. And I am just blessed that God has allowed me to feel that way now. Now that I have told you a few stories about me, I want to help you tell yours. But I want you to tell it in a way that you are most comfortable. It took me a while to be able to tell what happened to me. But when I started sharing, I felt like a load was let off of me. A load was lifted from me. And I can move on and feel free to do the things that I was supposed to do. Now, your situation might be different. It may not be a teacher, classmates, a pastor. It might not be them that hurt you, but it might be someone that you trusted, someone like a spouse or a parent, somebody you thought was a friend. You can do like I did and write things down. Get a journal. You can buy a composition book from the dollar store. You might even be able to find one of your favorite color. I write poetry, and many times I wrote poems about my situations. And one day I was able to even recite one of them at a mic night. You might want to do something like that. And I did that, and I was so glad that I did. Because when I came down from presenting reciting that poem, I mean, afterwards people had come to me and they thanked me. And they let me know that it just helped them to know that they weren't alone. You might even want to write a song about it, about your experience. And then there are sometimes you might even find a song that tells a lot of what's going on with you, and just let that sink in so that it will relax you. Maybe listen to the words, and maybe it's something you can pull from it to be able to start telling. You can Google to search for songs, or even if somebody else wrote a poem. You can share it in a small group, but make sure it's a group that you feel safe in. You feel like, it may be a support group. And there are many support groups in churches. It might even be one in your community. You can Google that as well, just for your area. And finally, this is a big one. You may want to confront the person. Now, I have written many letters to the people that did things to me. And I told them exactly how I felt and how wrong I felt that they were for doing it. But you know what? I never mailed them, because I did it for me. I realized that if I sent the letter, I might somewhere be looking for an apology from them. And then I realized I didn't need an apology. I was able to forgive them and move on. So you might even want to do that. Write them a letter. but know that you don't have to send it. You write it so you can see it on paper. And it's for you. It's for you to get past it. And I was just satisfied that I was able to write the letter. So tell your story. People may judge you. Romans 2:1 says, "You therefore have no excuse, you who pass judgment on someone else. For at whatever point you judge another, you are condemning yourself, because you pass judgment. You do the same things." People might not believe you, but John 8:32 says, "The truth shall set you free." Some of the translation says, "The truth shall make you free." Be free. Be encouraged to speak. I'd love to help you tell your story. I want to hear from you. Start by writing to me if you like. You can contact me at contact@starbutterproducts.com. That's contact@starbutterproducts.com. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Bye-bye.